View from the Pew. Should you be offended, provoked, triggered, intimidated, shocked, confused, or inspired to think independently, call our studio lines at 515-442-KPOG and join the conversation. After all, it's your voice we want to hear. The View from the Pew on KPOG and webcast1live.com. Weekdays from 4 to 6 on the Power of God.
Now, here's today's host, Frank the Verse Thomas.
Well, hello, it is Frank the Verse Thomas here at View from Pew. And I'd like to encourage you to give me a call, text me. Let me know what you think of the show. Let me know what you think of the stories we share with you. You can give me a thumbs up. You can give me a thumbs down. It makes no difference, but at least I know what some of you think. And if you'd like to challenge me on a particular story, feel free to call me up. Feel free to text me. Feel free to watch the Facebook. Facebook. Let me get that out. Easy for me to say. Facebook chat. And I'll address your comments there. So if you would like to call or text the show, you can do so by following these simple instructions.
We want to hear from you, so give us a call on the Service Legends Talk and Text line, 515-442-5764. That's 515-442-KPOG.
And I was just getting somebody tagged into the Facebook post. Excuse me for that brief delay. Then I want you to also know that we do our View from a Pew here daily, 4 to 6 at Jordan Crossing, and that's at the...
Live from the Yellow Blue Studios, your home for the light from LED Lighting. This is KPOG Grimes, West Des Moines.
So we're going to get to our Sabbath school lesson today, and that's walking with the Lord. Just double check that. We're going to talk about polygamy or polyamory. What's the difference? Is there a difference? So we'll talk a little bit about that. Then I have some Christian news stories for your enjoyment or dislike. And again, I want to hear your input, whether you like the things I share with you or you don't like the things I share with you. I've been following up a little bit on the Bob Mueller testimony today on the House of Representatives hearing. Was watching a little bit of that this morning, writing some things on Facebook. I'll just frankly share with you. This is I'll just share with you what I pinned on Facebook this morning. This is my initial thoughts. My initial thoughts on the Bob Mueller testimony today before the House of Representatives. One, it seems clear he neither wrote nor read his own report. Number two, it's very apparent that his staff was driving the train. Number three, Mueller at times seemed confused and seemed hard of hearing. Number four, Mueller stuttered and stammered in answers to many questions, to many members' questions. Number five, it was very obvious that Mueller was only a figure puppet head of this independent committee that was in investigating of the president. And he only signed off on the report written by others. And number six, it didn't appear to me that Mueller has all his faculties. Now, I'm not saying he's a total puppet, but it appears to me that he's not. He's a shell of his former self. This guy, once upon a time, was FBI director. I believe he was appointed under. And that's the other thing. Supposedly, the question was asked of Mueller when he was appointed FBI director, and he couldn't remember what president appointed him to be FBI director. I believe it was George W. Bush, but don't you think it would be important for Mueller to remember who appointed him? I mean, I would think Clarence Thomas or Neil Gorsuch or Brett Kavanaugh or John Roberts, Sam Alito, Kagan, Sotomayor, Stephen Breyer, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I would assume any Supreme Court nominee would know the president that nominated them to the court. But Mueller seemed to hesitate and not know who appointed him to FBI director. That's stunning. So those were just a couple of initial thoughts that I had. So I was watching a little bit of the hearing today before I swept off to the grocery store and got some grocery shopping done for the week. And then got in here about 2:30 to ready for talking to you, which is my favorite thing, I think. Hope it's your favorite thing listening to me. Let me get my computer and seat adjusted here and mouse adjusted. Pardon me. I will start you out with a health story. Wow! Exclamation point. Parkinson's disease managed by stimulation of patient's ear canal. Participants in the study reported greater movement and mobility and also showed improvements in decision making, attention, memory, mood, and sleep. Participants also said that by the end of the study, they found it easier to perform everyday activities by themselves. A new study has shown that gentle, controlled stimulation of the ear canal can reduce symptoms of Parkinson's disease. The randomized controlled study led by the University of Kent, UK, shows that twice daily stimulation for 2 months was associated with significant reduction in motor and non-motor features of Parkinson's. Participants reported greater movement and mobility and also showed improvements in decision-making, attention, memory, mood, and sleep. Participants also said by the end of the study they found it easier to perform everyday activities by themselves. Most of the therapeutic gains were greatest 5 weeks after the end of treatment, suggesting that the treatment may have long-lasting effects. Stimulation therapy was performed at home using a portable headset produced exclusively for clinical investigations by Scion Neurostim, a U.S.-based device company. Participants continued to take their regular dopamine replacement therapy while using the easy-to-use device. The study was led by Professor David Wilkinson. They conducted it on 46 individuals with Parkinson's disease. Wilkinson said the study raises intriguing possibility that some aspects of Parkinson's may be better managed if traditional drug therapies are combined with gentle, non-invasive stimulation of the balance organs. The results from this small-scale study are very exciting. More research is needed, but it holds much promise to relieve troublesome symptoms. The results are very encouraging, according to Professor Ray Chowdhury. He's director of the National Parkinson's Foundation Centre of Excellence at King's College Hospital. Why does these guys have a title a mile long? Achieving both widespread durable gains in motor and specifically non-motor aspects. He's intrigued and wants to see where this device technology might go. Also, Professor Wilkinson's research at Kent State School of Psychology has shown that gentle stimulation of the ear canal can also prove neurological symptoms associated with stroke and traumatic brain injury. So that's kind of neat. Okay, did I click that out? Let me see if I can. I got my stories so crammed together that sometimes when I think I'm clicking the story, I'm exiting out of it, hitting the X. I didn't think I had done that, but okay, here is a story that I find is not going to make the LGBT community happy. But a miraculous deathbed conversion gives this former transgender a powerful message of deliverance and a new life. It's a video. We won't be playing the video for you. But recently I witnessed two transsexual prostitutes who were molested as children. Okay, so hang on. Recently I witnessed two transsexual prostitutes. So these are men who were molested as children, which is how the LGBT movement recruits its members. Or how it recruits its numbers, pardon me. In our conversation, they told me they knew that God did not. This is key. They told me they knew that God did not create them to be this way, transsexual, and they hugged me when I told them the truth about the movement. We have to stop loving people to death and start loving people to life. This is David Arthur. After living as a transgender prostitute, David Arthur in 2009 was told that he had contracted HIV/AIDS and had only 3 months to live. Medication was no longer a viable option. David laid in his hospital bed, afraid to die, when he experienced a life-altering epiphany. I was in a hospital bed under hospice care when I read a verse in the Bible that says, "And likewise also men, leaving the natural use of women, burned in their lust one towards another, men with men, working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error." Romans 1:27. The words of that Bible passage in memory of a correctional officer who preached to me in prison compelled me to start praying and confessing my sins to my Heavenly Father, says Arthur, speaking at Trinity at the Eastern Gate in Pickerington, Ohio. Now, 10 years later, Arthur encourages people to leave the LGBT lifestyle through his ministry. I Belong. This is the ministry, I Belong, Amen Ministries. Recently, I witnessed two transsexual prostitutes molested as children, which is I know how the LGBT movement recruits its numbers. In a conversation, they told me that they knew God did not create them to be this way. They hugged me when I told them the truth about the movement. We have to stop loving people to death and start loving them to life. So it was David Arthur, who was once a transgender prostitute, that witnessed two other transgender prostitutes on a deathbed confession say that they knew God did not create them to be that way. Growing up without a father, David grew up naturally seeking the closeness from a man he was lacking. I was molested by several adult men throughout my childhood before kindergarten. I associated negative sexual attention with the intimacy I desired. By the age of 9, I was cutting school early to go to bus stops and public restrooms to have encounters with dirty old men since I desired closeness. At that time, that was the only intimacy I knew. David admits that the more feminine he acted, the more attention he received. So he began dressing as a girl, despite the objections of his mother. At age 14, he left the house and went to the streets of Philadelphia. That's a movie Tom Hanks was in. Philadelphia, streets of Philadelphia. I was embraced by the LGBT movement, and they took me under their wing since I was young and tender. Eventually, I started injecting female hormones. Now, I guess I shouldn't laugh. But I read this story once about two gay individuals, and the one individual wanted silicone implants or silicone injected in his buttocks. And so the other gentleman went to and again, it's probably not funny for them, but it's just the story of the ridiculousness of human nature. But he went to the local auto parts supply store and got automotive grade silicone. I believe I read that in Rush Limbaugh's book. Eventually, he started injecting female hormones. While his kids my age were thinking about their first school dance, my goal was to become the best prostitute I could be. He abused drugs, getting arrested several times. David went to prison, met a corrections officer who told him he was a man and not a transgender. The guard also began planting seeds in David's life by telling him the story of Saul from Tarsus, who became later Paul. The guard told David one day that he would set many captives free. By 2008, David began having back issues and become hunched over, needing the assistance of a walker. He was told he had full-fledged osteoporosis with brittle bones due to female hormones he took. See, so again, people, do you understand the article I shared with you yesterday? Talking about these hormone blockers we're giving our young kids, and no one knows the side effects, and it's not been studied to know what this may end up in being. This is junk science. But the push to do this stuff, we're going to risk the lives of our children. Here's a man who has osteoporosis, hunched over because of the female hormones he took. A year later, David had full-blown AIDS. My immunity system was decimated with T cells going from 10,000 to 0. I had infections in my blood, my brain, and boils on my skin were covering my entire body. After David's encounter with truth, his body went through an extreme makeover. Doctors testing David have no scientific explanation for the miraculous turnaround of his immunity system. Well, I just say immune system. They had never seen a viral load as high as David's and then suddenly go undetectable. In fact, David's bone density today is actually better than what a man of his age should be. David feels God has saved him and given him an assignment to reach others who are missing that love of a father. As I told someone once who was questioning who their earthly biological dad was, I said, well, the person you need to ask is deceased, and the person that you want to question believes he's your real dad. And I said, it doesn't make any difference who your dad is, because you have a Father in heaven who's ready to adopt you. Stop the quest. Don't let that answer Don't let the search of that answer trip you up the rest of your life. You have a Father in heaven. So David feels God has saved him and given him an assignment to reach others who are missing the love of that Father, or want to know who that Father was, or had a father who abused and mistreated them. Society mistakenly denotes intimacy as being sexual. True intimacy is sharing a close bond with someone like David shared with Jonathan in the Bible. And obviously, there are unsavory types who try to inference that David and Jonathan had a homosexual relationship. It's heresy. It's ridiculous. Since my experience with God, I now know I am going to heaven. I will take anything this world has to throw at me because I'm no longer who I once was. The reason I am not who I once was is because I'm able to learn the intimacy that is in the God-given, and His plan is the best. Now, as I said on this broadcasts a number of times, ye must be born again to enter the kingdom of heaven, to which Nicodemus questioned the Savior, well, can a man enter his mother's womb twice? This is a spiritual rebirth. So just because you think you are born a certain way, that is your old sinful nature. And when you are born again in Jesus Christ, you are given a new nature. You don't have to continue to be a prostitute. You don't have to continue to be an alcoholic, because you are now the son or the daughter of a risen king. So you don't refer to yourself as your old identity in Satan. You refer to your new regenerated identity in Jesus Christ. So you're no longer a gambleaholic, a sexaholic, a drugaholic, an alcoholic, whatever your vice happens to be. So you're no longer a prostitute, a transsexual prostitute, David. You are a son of a living king. So you bury that identity. You bury that identity. And when you're born again, you take on a new identity in Jesus Christ. You're listening to A View from a Pew, and I'm your host, Frank the Verse Thomas, and we are here at KPOG 102.9, Grimes, West Des Moines. How does Israel stay ahead in the battle against terrorism? We're sharing a lot about tunnel warfare. We're dealing with a lot of how to deal effectively in urban terrain, how to find the terrorists and limit the collateral damage to non-combatants, especially the civilians that are in the combat area, and finding terrorists and terrorists only. Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus. Let me say this first. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle, Psalms 144:1. Jerusalem, Israel, CBN News, a major challenge in fighting terrorism is staying ahead of the game. Israel's success, not only in profiling, but in their questioning, some may call interrogation. They just profile and pull people out of line and talk to them, have a conversation with them. And if they're uncomfortable with that person's answers and that person shows a lot of nervous tendencies, that person isn't going to get on the airplane. You haven't seen any airplanes blown up over Israel, so they must be doing something and doing it well. Nor do you see airplanes from Israel blowing up anywhere. Israel does a very good job of weeding out people trying to climb on airplanes. We need to take some lessons in this country from the security of the Israelis. Israel's success in doing so and protecting itself from attacks has helped the country make the country a worldwide leader in counterterrorism. We're looking at the threats. We're looking at what's going on around the borders of Israel and inside it. Then together with that, we need to make sure that we're moving on. We're not getting ready for yesterday. We're getting ready for tomorrow. So again, let me just give you an example. Good old Des Moines of Iowa, they build, their goal is to get 3 consistent lanes in what you would call the loop around, 235, 35, 80, 35. It's a loop around the city. And they wanted to ensure that loop was a consistent 3 lanes all the way around the city. Well, and it took them a number of years to get that built and done, and a lot of inconvenience along the way. But the problem of it is the 3 lanes should have been 4 or 5 or 6. Because you always build for 20 years ahead in the future. So you're looking at traffic 20 years ahead down the road. My grandpa, who worked on WPA, talked about how people thought they were nuts when they were building the interstate system and the highway systems out in California with 6 and 8 lanes. And now they need twice that many. No one would even contemplate raising an eyebrow about building 8-lane highways in many of our major metropolitan areas, because you have to build to keep up with future traffic. So you don't build for yesterday. So this is exactly what the IDF person is saying, who asked not to be identified by CBN News, is we're not getting ready for yesterday, we're getting ready for tomorrow. The IDF started in the 1970s, or it started the Lothar Counterterrorism School in the 1970s after a series of deadly terror attacks. Since it's developed to include training programs such as tunnel warfare, they trained some 10,000 combat soldiers in counter-terrorist measures. We teach our soldiers how to rappel down from helicopters, how to breach silently, or what they call a loud breach into buildings, hostage situations, to free hostages taken by terrorists. We also teach underground warfare and tunnel complexes, mock tunnels they've dug especially from urban terrain that connects with urban areas. So it's a constant fight. It's a constant fight. Because when you close off one hole in your house to a rat, they're going to seek out another. And it's the same way with terrorists. When you plug one hole to a terrorist, they're going to constantly try to find a soft entrance or a soft target. So you have to stay ahead of the game, and you have to stay ahead of it instead of trying to keep up with it. So you train to stay ahead of the game, not keep up with the game, or not try to play the game that was played yesterday. Here's just a quick story I'll share. Grand staircase of a king discovered in an ancient town mentioned in the Bible. Of all the sites mentioned in the book of Joshua as having been conquered by the Israelites, none more important as destruction of Hazor. Professor Amnon Ben Tor. 7 stunning large basalt stairs recently excavated at Tel Hazor give new indication of the ancient grandeur of the Canaanite kingdom 3,500 years ago. Hazor. As depicted in Joshua 11:10, Hazor was the head of the Canaanite settlements taken by the Israelite leader. While there are still more stairs to be uncovered, it was thought that they lead into a large palace complex from where the king of Hazor ruled on the northern slopes of the upper city facing the lower city. House rejects boycott of Israel in a 398-17 vote. All right. When's the last time you ever seen the House of Representatives, that is 435 members, ever vote 398 for anything? 398-17. That means Republicans and Democrat. That would be called a nonpartisan vote. So it's got mostly all your Democrats, mostly all your Republicans vote in the affirmative for something, and that is to reject a boycott of Israel. Reject a boycott of Israel. Now, they're supposed to be the best friend the United States has in the Arab world. The Mideast. But Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar vote in the minority. So of the 17 negative votes, who else? I don't know about Rashida Tlaib and Ayanna Presley, because those are the 4 people that make up the so-called squad. But in a nonpartisan vote, you would think you could get all 435 members, especially with the quote-unquote anti-Semitic sentiments. Too many S's there. Semitic and sentiments. Don't want to say that 6 times fast. But with anti-Semite views being popular in certain parts of the population, now I'm putting too many P's together. Certain parts of the population, you would think that you'd get a vote of 435 to zip. Nada. Zero. Nada. But no, there's 17 holdouts. Let me see if I can find out. Let me see if I can find out how this breaks down. The pro-Israel resolution passed 398-17, with 16 of the no votes coming from Democrats. So apparently there was only one GOP who voted against the pro-Israel resolution. And the ones who voted against the resolution was Omar of Minnesota, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from New York, and Rashida Tlaib of Michigan. I wonder where their comrade, and I don't know how how they pronounce her name, Ayanna Presley. Apparently she wasn't in that. But again, you have a lot of anti-Semitism in the world. You've had it for a number of years. I guess that's why Adolf Hitler tried to put somewhere between 4 and 8 million of them to death. But yet you have 17 people that vote against a boycott of Israel. Or they vote for a boycott of Israel. So the House rejects the boycott of Israel that 17 people would like. 1 Republican and 16 Democrats, including the 3 aforementioned, Alexandria, Omar, and Tlaib. Okay, so I've got a number of stories I want to share after the top of the hour that involve polyamory and polygamy. So I've got 2 more stories I want to get to here in this hour. And this is an older story, but it's pertinent. It is pertinent. Because in the Seventh-day Adventist denomination, and some other denominations may have the same thing, but we have a conference office, so we have what we call conference office workers. We have academies, so we have faculty members, and academies and colleges, so you'd have faculty members, conference office workers, and pastors. I went to school with a lot of pastors' kids, conference office workers' kids, and faculty members' kids, okay? So this story kind of stuck out to me. Why do 1/3, and this is a little bit of an older story. This goes back to 2013, but I think it's still a pertinent story. Why do 1/3 of pastors' kids drop out of church? And a lot of friends. A lot of friends that were pastors' kids. I got a lot of friends who were conference office workers' kids. And a few faculty members' kids at a boarding academy. What do Rick Warren, Katy Perry, and Jessica Simpson all have in common? They're all pastors' kids. A fascinating new study of children of the clergy is making news with some remarkable insights for us. You've probably heard of the stereotypical prodigal pastor's kid who was raised in church but wants nothing to do with God today. I think I actually communicated with an individual like that over the weekend. Actually, only 7% of pastors' kids no longer consider themselves. Actually, only 7% of pastors' kids no longer consider themselves to be Christian. This is below average. 9% of their peers would say the same. Southern Baptists and other evangelical pastors' kids are even less likely to reject the faith at 3 and 2% respectively. However, 33% of pastors' kids are no longer actively involved in church. Pastors account for this fact in a variety of ways. Unrealistic expectations placed on their children by others. Exposures to the negative aspects of church life and head the list. While only 5% wish they had given their children more Bible teaching, 42% wish they had spent more time with their children. All right, let me cut to the chase, because I'm kind of an expert on this, because I've seen conference office workers' kids, pastors' kids come and go. They're a dime a dozen. Shake a tree, a dozen will fall out. I'm still standing. But what many pastors' kids feel is that they, for the most part in their life, play second fiddle to the congregation. Ellen White says a pastor's number one responsibility is to his children. Obviously, you have your marriage, and you have your children, the congregation should never, let me repeat, should never be priority over your own children. And far too many pastors' kids have experienced playing second fiddle to the congregation, and trust me, from knowing a lot of pastors' kids, they don't like it. And they are going to show their butt. In the process. They will involve themselves in spiritualism. They will involve themselves in all manner of evil to get their parents' attention. Because ultimately what a kid wants is his parents' attention. Now I'm going to share a story with you. I've shared on this radio channel before. It's a story I read a long time ago. It doesn't involve a pastor's kid. But a mother, single mother, was raising I shouldn't say a son. I don't know how many kids she had, but she had one particular son who was getting up 16 years old, 17 years old. And the son and his buddy wanted to take the mom's car, and the mom refused to give the son the car because she knew the kids were up to no good. She didn't, she was a working person. She had to have the car to get back and forth to work. And she didn't want to give over the keys to her son. Likely drugs involved. But the son was so angry and incensed by not being able to have the mother's car that I don't know if he struck once or beat the mother in the head with a hammer. Because he wanted his way. This is a true story. May even happened here in Des Moines, Iowa, or somewhere in the Des Moines area. I believe it happened in Des Moines. When the young man, I suppose, dried out from his drugs abuse, and he realized that what he had done to his mother, he was he was distraught. He was in remorse. For he said in an interview, all he ever wanted was his mother's attention. And many times when he wouldn't get his mother's attention, he would break something that belonged to her. This time he broke her skull. Children crave their parents' attention. Let me repeat that for you, those of you who are a little bit slow. Parents crave their parents' attention. And when they don't get it, they're going to do all manner of showing their butt. Pastors' kids are no different. But pastors' kids have something else that many of us don't deal with. At least your mom and dad, you may have some brothers and sisters, your dad may have a job, your mom may have a job that takes time away from you, but when a pastor's child sees everyone in that church comes before them, they don't like it. So Jewish culture, this is a story of people which were scattered all over the world and yet remained a single family in a nation which time and time again doomed to destruction, yet out of the ruins rose to a new life. How did the Jewish people remain so united across the many centuries of persecution and dispersal? Their shared traditions. Entrance to the community begins at circumcision. Observant Jews follow a kosher dietary law with every meal. Some wear Hasidic clothing every day and educated in Jewish schools. Their youth observe bar mitzvah, marry only within Judaism, and have large families. Many should keep the Sabbath. I find that, to my chagrin, there is more quote-unquote secular Jews than you would think. But kids, when they don't get their way, they're going to let you know their displeasure. And according to this article in 2013, one third of pastors' kids drop out of church and may lose their faith in Christianity altogether. I know one of those kids. I won't mention his name, Christian. But he's one of the statistics. Stats for short. And just for my agnostic friend Christian's pleasure, quote, "Heavens declare the glory of God." NASA's Chandra X-ray Observatory celebrates its 20th anniversary with stunning images of our Milky Way. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork, Psalms 19:1. The commemorative 20th anniversary of NASA's Chandra X-ray Observatory, an assembly of new images is being released. These images represent the breadth of Chandra's exploration, demonstrating the variety of objects it studies, as well as how the X-ray complement of the data collected in other types of light. Some of these images contain Chandra data exclusively, and the rest shows how X-rays fit with different types of light and other telescopes collect. The central region of our galaxy, the Milky Way, contains an exotic collection of objects, including a supermassive black hole weighing about 4 million times the mass of the Sun, called Sagittarius A. Asterisks. Clouds of gas at temperatures of millions of degrees, neutron stars, white dwarf stars tearing material from companion stars, and beautiful tendrils of radio emission. The region around Sagittarius A asterisk is shown in this new composite image with Chandra data, green and blue, combined with radio data red from the Meerkat telescope in South Africa, which will eventually become part of the Square Kilometer Array, SKA. And I tell you something. It is an enigma to me that anyone who spends year after year after year gazing at our universe to declare there's no God just is mind-boggling. They so want to be able to reach into the bounds of the universe so bad they can taste it. They haven't explored all the mysteries on this planet called Earth. The constellation Orion is renowned for its beauty. People think that life emanates from Orion, which it does, because I believe the Great Nebula 42, which is one of the most beautiful nebulas in the entire universe, I believe to be the home of what we would know as the third heaven. Where God, the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit reside. I told my friend Christian once at another radio interview on another radio network, and he was kind of stunned, and he said, I didn't expect that kind of answer to come from your mouth. But I said, friend, when you travel to the great nebula 42 in the constellation Orion, and you search that nebula from top to bottom, side to side, and you can come back and declare there's no God, maybe I'll believe you. Trouble of it is, you're not going to get there, because wormholes don't exist. It's an Einstein theory. You remember Neil deGrasse High, air quotes, Tyson, and I call him high because he's high on crack cocaine or something when he puts forth the notion on Bill Moyers that a young earther should not be allowed to vote. Neil deGrasse High will buy into black holes, even though they can't necessarily prove them, otherwise known as wormholes, a.k.a. traverse time and space, which is only a theory of Albert Einstein, but cannot be duplicated, replicated in the science laboratory. So Neil deGrasse High, who claims a young earther should not be allowed to vote, can't even prove the existence of time or wormholes which man may traverse time, space, continuum. But we're going to listen to Neil deGrasse High declare there's no God. You know, the guy who comes on and he narrates Cosmos. The more you look into space, the more you research the body, the more archaeological digs and excavations that you unearth. Every time you find it declares God, more and more and more. Nature screams God. But yet, the infidels and skeptics will tell you, God, we've done plenty fine without him. This is Frank the Verse Thomas. You've been listening to View from a Pew. We're going to hit our SRN news, and we will be back after the top of the hour.
With SRN News, I'm Keith Peters in Washington. President Trump says the Russia probe created a phony cloud over his administration. It says House committee hearings featuring testimony from special counsel Robert Mueller were all nonsense.
President Trump says Mueller's performance was, quoting here, obviously not very good, and is accusing him of not knowing about certain details of his investigation. Mr. Trump is calling it a devastating day for the Democrats.
After the congressional hearings ended, Mr. Trump spoke to reporters at the White House before leaving for Wheeling, West Virginia. At the hearing today, former special counsel Robert Mueller had to clarify that he did not consider bringing criminal charges against Mr. Trump as part of his Russia investigation, as Democrats had hoped.
I want to add one correction to my testimony this morning. I want to go back to one thing that was said this morning by Mr. Liu, who said, and I quote, "You didn't charge the president because of the OLC opinion. That is not the correct way to say it. As we say in the report, and as I said at the opening, we did not reach a determination as to whether the president committed a crime."
Facebook says it's under antitrust investigation by the Federal Trade Commission. That word comes after the FTC's $5 billion fine against the world's largest social media network. The fine is by far the biggest the FTC has levied on a tech company, though it won't make much of a dent in the company that had nearly $56 billion in revenue last year. And despite efforts by the FTC's majority to get a unanimous vote, 2 of the 5 commissioners opposed the settlement and said they would have preferred litigation to seek tougher penalties. Dominic Raab has been named Britain's foreign secretary, the country's top diplomat, and one of the most senior roles in government. Raab's been appointed as new Prime Minister Boris Johnson assembles a cabinet he hopes can help him deliver Brexit. On Wall Street, the Dow down by 79, but the Nasdaq rose 71. This is SRN News. An expert says a number of Hollywood stars actually agree with the concerns of decency groups, but you wouldn't know it.
They do agree, and they will not say so publicly because they will get blackballed. It's in an industry that preaches tolerance, any disagreement with the group thought is considered intolerant.
Tim Winter of the Parents Television Council.
It's quite ironic that people who profess, free speech in their work, when it comes time to actually criticizing others in the industry, will all of a sudden get lockjaw.
He says it's time for some of those stars to speak out. The ongoing legal battle between a woman living as a man and the high school she graduated from is just the latest in a growing number of cases featuring transgender issues. The National Center for Transgender Equality predicts the Virginia woman's case will likely result in a victory, but Gary McCaleb of Alliance Defending Freedom says the courts are still divided. This is SRN News. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin is heading back to China next week to further talks aimed at resolving a trade battle between Washington and Beijing. Mnuchin says the impending resumption of trade talks with China is a step forward.
My expectation is there'll be a few more meetings before we get a deal done. So I wouldn't expect we'll resolve all the issues, but the fact that we're back at the table at the direction of the two presidents is important.
Mnuchin is bringing Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer with him. A suicide bomber walked into the office of Mogadishu's mayor and detonated explosives strapped to his waist, killing 6 people and badly wounding the mayor minutes after a visit from the new United Nations envoy. The attack claimed by the al-Shabaab extremist group occurred after the envoy to Somalia, James Swan, paid the mayor a courtesy call and left the compound. The mayor, Abdirrahman Omar Osman, and his deputy were rushed to a hospital with critical wounds, but 6 other officials were killed. More details at srnnews.com. I'm Keith Peters.
KPOG 102.9 FM, Grimes.
And we know that in all things God works for the goodness of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Romans 8:28.
Every weekday on the Power of God, KPOG 102.9 FM, and live on webcast1live.com. Join us for a view from the pew. Should you be offended, provoked, triggered, intimidated, shocked, confused, or inspired to think independently, call our studio lines at 515-442-KPOG and join the conversation. After all, it's your voice we want to hear. The View from the Pew on KPOG and webcast1live.com. Weekdays from 4 to 6 on the Power of God.
Now, here's today's host, Frank the Verse Thomas.
Well, I have to inform you that if you listen to the show and you listen to KPOG, Friday at 6 o'clock, when View from the Pew is over, the KPOG 102.9 signal will be down until Sunday at 6 p.m. So let me just check that here calendar-wise. So on Wednesday, July 26th, Friday at 6 p.m., the signal will go off, and it will be down to Sunday, July 28th at 6 p.m. So Bob wanted me to relay that message to the KPOG 102.9 FM listeners, and we'll be giving that message periodically all week. And just let you know that we will be back up Sunday evening. If you'd like to give me your input on the show, the good, the bad, the ugly, anything in between, you can do so by listening to these simple instructions.
We want to hear from you, so give us a call on the Service Legends Talk and Text line, 515-442-5764. That's 515-442-KPOG.
And we do a View from the Pew here at Jordan Crossing, Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m., and that is by and at the...
Live from the Yellow Blue Studios, your home for the light from LED Lighting. This is KPOG Grimes, West Des Moines.
So, I want to just share a little ditty here with you. Not going to get into the story, but Facebook and Google face antitrust probe. Major antitrust probe announced into Google and Facebook. Insiders say Google is biased. Hey, there is a shock to my friend Christian. Google might slant its search results depending on their politics, depending on their political leanings. That is just a shock. I just can't imagine that Silicon Valley would do anything like that. So I want to share with you a story that I want to share this hour and have a conversation about it and do a little unpacking of this story. That didn't take long. The APA normalizing polyamory. What's polyamory? Well, let me give you a definition of polyamory. Many, quote, several, Latin love is a practice of or desire for intimate relationships with more than one partner, with consent of all partners involved. It has been described as, quote, consensual, ethical, responsible, non-monogamy. So monogamy would be one man, one woman, the rest of your life. Polyamory would be relationships with multiple people. So this article says that didn't take long at all. The APA normalizing polyamory. More than 20 years ago, the late Father Richard John Newhouse penned one of his most memorable sayings. When you come across an article titled "Wither Incense?" he said it's safe to assume it won't be a vigorous defense of traditional morality. To paraphrase Father Newhouse, whenever American Psychological Association addresses an aspect of human sexuality, you can bet it won't be in a vigorous defense of traditional morality. Recently, the APA announced the creation of a special task force. Oh, wow. Boy, geez, Louise, I just can't believe. I was just waiting for a special task force to tell me what I already know. To address the needs of people who practice consensual non-monogamy, including their intersecting marginalized identities. Isn't that a lot of words that need to be unpacked? So here goes. First, consensual non-monogamy is a euphemism for polyamory. Polyamory is the practice of or desire for emotional intimate relations with more than one partner. And intersecting marginalized identities means the task force will look into how the desire to have more than one partner is in fact deep-seated identity, and anyone who thinks otherwise, discriminating against people who were born that way, is a bigot. or as APA put it in their announcement, the ability to engage in desired intimacy without social and medical stigmatization is not liberty for all. Many of us predicted polyamory would, in fact, be the next cause of the sexual revolution. Polyamorous marriage seems, for now, inevitable. That would mean marriage between more than two people, and why not? If marriage is officially severed from procreation, as so-called same-sex marriage has now legislated, there is no reason to keep it to two people instead of 3, 4, or more. You know how us alarmists and fearmongers talked about that slippery slope? Oh, no, that will never happen. So let me bounce over just quickly before I finish with this article, and let me just give you the headlines of another article I'm going to share after this. This is from 2012. So this article is not giving me a date on this article. But this article have a date. It's Tuesday, October the 2nd, 2012. Multi-partner marriage, the next logical step after same-sex marriage. So back in 2012, it was being said by the fearmongers and the alarmists that the next logical step is multiple partner relationships and multiple partner marriage. So, as a member of the task force on Medium, monogamy is privileged, implying, of course, that it shouldn't be. The task force will study all kinds of polyamorous relationships with the stated goal, according to the same task force member, of helping mental health professionals examine their biases and take a non-judgmental posture towards clients engaged in consensual non-monogamy, just as they would with LGBTQ clients. Notice the assumption here. As long as the behavior in question is consensual, that makes it all right. It's liberty, you know. It's what liberty will land you in. This is why I had more vehement arguments on talk radio over the years with a libertarian than I did liberals. Because libertarians is all about liberty. Don't do anything to stand in the way of liberty. Well, liberty, in its true sense of the word, will land you in bondage. Some people think you should have the right to do that. Well, I would argue that, like when they wanted to raise the speed limit in Michigan, and the Michigan officials said, no, we've got the speed limit right where we want it, because right now it's posted 65. If we raise it to 70, then they're going to do 75. We got them where we want them right now. So there's always going to be evil and sin in the world. I don't want to see anybody arrested in their bedroom on antiquated sodomy laws. I don't want to see someone drug out their bedroom and thrown in jail because they're practicing sodomy. But nor do I want government to put its stamp of approval on sodomy. See the difference? I don't want to legislate morality. Just like I don't want to necessarily legislate like the Michigan officials didn't want to legislate a higher speed limit, because they already know that people are breaking the speed limit as it is. You raise it higher, they just take more. But while I don't want to legislate morality, I don't want to legislate immorality. So we know that people are going to go and get into consensual gay, lesbian, polymorous relationships, but let's not put our stamp of approval on it, and let's not make it legal according to the law. Let's not legislate immorality. Notice the behavior question is, quote, consensual, whatever that means. Mental health professionals should take a non-judgmental posture. The real goal here is to remove the bias of mental health professionals. Remember the phrase from the announcement I quoted earlier about the medical and social stigmatization. Stigmatization, and has been the case time to time with the APA, the goal is to promote an ideology by giving a scientific veneer. And you know what a veneer is? It's just a, like you have a tooth and you put a veneer on it, so it's just a covering. You're covering up evil with a shiny object, a shiny veneer. And you want to call it science. It's junk science. This ideology reduces all sexual morality to consent and assumes that there's no good or bad way to define or engage in desired intimacy. Any discomfort that anyone must be at the any discomfort that anyone has must be the result of stigmatization. As Andre von Moll probably, a physician who has studied adolescent sexuality, told the Christian Post this is entirely expected and predicted consequence of what happens when ideology replaces science, or otherwise feelings replace science. The APA is again showing us that they are a professional guild and not a scientific organization. It's also entirely and predicted consequence of our cultural trajectory regarding human sexuality. 4 years ago, Robbie George wrote an article in the American Interest entitled Is Polyamory Next? Everything he pointed to is there has happened. Systematic or sympathetic depictions of polyamory in the media, opinion pieces by legal scholars, and a call after call for us to keep our minds open. As Madonna once sang something to the effect of, open your mind and the body will follow. And you know, Madonna is a standard of our morality, an upright standard, stalwart of morality. Keep our minds open towards polygamy and other multi-partner sexual relationships. He made it clear the same logic that justified same-sex marriage would eventually be applied to polyamory, which the same-sex advocates even then freely admitted, which is only going to open the door for one day a man to go into court and say, well, you can't blame me that I'm attracted to adolescents. That will be the next step. But we're a fearmonger and we're an alarmist. They just won't do that. Well, let me tell you why they were wrong. Given the changes in the Supreme Court, we may not get a Obergefell type decision for polyamory, but this move by the APA suggests it may not be necessary. If enough people are convinced that disapproving of polyamory is bigoted, the politics and the law, especially in some jurisdictions, will quickly follow suit. So let me share this with you. This was not too long after the same-sex marriage ruling. 3 men marry each other on Valentine's Day. And this was photos of 3 Thailand men who recently married each other has gone viral. Now this is February 26, 2015. So this is post legalized same-sex marriage. But photos of 3 Thailand men who recently married each other has gone viral, garnering support for the concept of same-sex thruples. So that would be 3. Well, quadruples. When's that going to be the norm? But thruples would mean 3 people in a marriage worldwide, but also generating remarks from Christians about the confirmation of the slippery slope that's long been predicted. The men who have only been identified as Joke, Bell, and Arthana reportedly participated in a traditional water pouring ceremony on February the 15th and had photographs taken of their union. However, the act was more of a symbolic gesture, as neither homosexuality or polygamy are legal in Thailand. Love occurs unconditionally, and it's not just limited to 2 people. Art wrote on Facebook, "Love brings peace to the world." The threesome has also been featured on Thailand television and have posted affectionate pictures online, which includes captions such as, "The 3 of us will forever hold hands and walk together." In May, 3 women in Massachusetts exchanged vows as they claim to be the world's first lesbian throuple. I had always dated girls who, although had boyfriends or girlfriends, were also allowed to date me. I shared a story several months ago on this program, and I've tried to since find the story. I've had some difficulty in finding it. I'm still searching. But it was a story of a pastor who was currently dating 3 women and 1 man. Now, I don't know if he was, I don't know that this was a polyamorous relationship, if all 5 of them were involved together, but he was dating 3 women and 1 man. This is a pastor. This is a supposed pastor of the gospel. A homosexual man, a homosexual pastor who is dating a man and 3 women. So the pastor is clearly, apparently bisexual. I don't think there's any marriage obviously been associated with that. But this is the slope we're on. This is the slippery slope we're on when you redefine marriage. Then someone can marry a dog, they can marry a cat, they can marry a car, they can marry themselves, they can marry a tree, they can marry a adolescent boy or girl. Because it's eventually coming. Someone's going to push the envelope. Someone's going to test the waters. Someone's going to test the Supreme Court. It's going to happen. Give enough time on this earth. Is it going to happen tomorrow? Maybe not. But man only evolves downward, left to his own devices. Man does not evolve upward. So now let me go back to this article from 2012 by James Tonkowicz. There are strange goings-on in the schools north of the border, goings-on that don't bode well for those of us south of the border. The Toronto District School Board, with the desire to create safe and positive space in the schools under its jurisdiction, has printed and distributed posters for the benefit of students starting in grade school. Love has no gender, proclaims one against the background of hearts, which are an assortment of male and female stick figures. Some hearts contain a male and some a female. Some are 2 females and some are 2 males. We expected as much. What we probably didn't expect is that some of the hearts have threesomes with a male and 2 females, or a female and 2 males. 2's company, 3's a crowd, we used to say. The Toronto District School Board wants to make it very clear to all. What's the Greek word for all, Senor Robert Montserrat? All. The Toronto School Board wants to make it very clear to all school-age children that 3 is most certainly not a crowd. Love not only knows no gender, it apparently knows no number. While Rick Santorum and others were excoriated for suggesting that multiple partner marriage was the next logical step after same-sex marriage, that love knows no gender poster is a pictorial reminder of a simple truth. Multi-partner marriage was always the next logical step. Once we remove the natural complementarity of one man and one woman from the notion of marriage and family, polygamy, a man with more than one wife, polyandry, a woman with more than one husband, and polyamory, multiple men and multiple women all married to each other, tumble out as naturally as same-sex marriage. An article published last year in the Australian notes that polyamorists see the success of gays and lesbians as a base on which they can build. The agenda now is to seek recognition and the removal of prejudice against multi-partner relationships, perhaps legislation to grant them civil unions and even legalize polyamorous marriage. And that ball's already rolling. A woman in Australia left her husband for a polyamorous relationship with another man and a woman, taking her children with her. When her shocked husband sought a court order to gain custody of children, the judge rejected his case, saying the threesome seemed to be a thoroughly decent, honest people, and I do not regard the relationship as being damaging to the children. Though the Netherlands doesn't consider it marriage, 2 brides and a common groom celebrate their civil union complete with wedding attire, reception, and abundant media coverage in 2005. In Great Britain, multiple partners are recognized in government pension system. In France, they're recognized in the welfare system. In Canada, though polygamy is still illegal, multiple partner families are free to function and are provided with rights, provided they do not commit marriage. Then in August, a notary in Brazil approved an application for civil union from a threesome, while the notary acted entirely on her own, and there are substantial legal challenges to the multi-partner unions. Her justification deserves attention. We're only recognizing what has already existed, always existed. We're not inventing anything. For better or worse, it doesn't matter. What we considered a family before isn't necessarily what we consider a family today. She assumes that marriage and family, and gender for that matter, are social constructs. Their forms are not permanent or in any sense binding from place to place or generation to generation. Morality evolves, marriage evolves, family evolves, and evolution is by definition progress. As G.K. Chesterton commented about his contemporaries, they seem to imagine that they avoid a metaphysical doubt about the mere change of assuming. It's not very clear why the change will always be for the better. The slide towards same-sex and multi-partner marriage in part reflects this unexamined belief that change is progress. What you see as progress, many of us see as decadence. But the change can only be deemed better or worse based on some external and unchanging standard. Progress is meaningless in a relativistic world. Change is simply change, and the most we can say about it is we like or dislike it. So, let me share this. Lamech was fifth in descent from Cain. According to this, his sins run from polygamy to murder to boastful pride in his transgressions. Cain was the first polygamist. Then Lamech took for himself 2 wives. The name of one was Adah, or Ada, and the name of the second was Zillah. Adah bore Jabal, the father of those who dwell in the tents and have livestock. His brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all those who play the harp and the flute. As for Zillah, she also bore Tubal-Cain, an instructor of every craftsman in bronze and iron. And the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. Then Lamech said to his wives, Adah and Zillah, hear my voice, wives of Lamech, listen to my speech. For I have killed a man for wounding me, even a young man for hurting me. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, then Lamech 77-fold. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son, named him Seth, for God had appointed another seed for me instead of Abel, whom Cain killed. And for Seth, to him was born a son, and he named him Enosh. The men began to call upon the name of the Lord. Genesis 4:17-22, this passage records the foundation of humanity's development as a more complex system of community living, including that of agriculture, art, and technology. God surely intended more complex human communal systems to arise, but since these are descendants of Cain, Scripture indicates that they were not working alongside God. Their planning and building are deliberately undertaken apart from God. The fruit of such development produced evil society before the flood. God did not create polygamy. Now, as far as I know, this is just didn't stay at a Holiday Inn, so this is a layman speaking here, lay person. Polygamy would be multiple people, so more than 2 people involved in a marriage. That would be classic polygamy. As far as I know, polyamory would be people who are not yet in a committed marital relationship. They're simply, through consensual consent, involved in a multiple partner relationship. Now, this was all tried during the French Revolution. And I believe they talked about Sophie Arnault talking about the sacrament of marriage. But no better way to deface the image of God in man than to weaken the sacredness and the obligations of the holy institution of marriage. During the French Revolution, marriage was rendered down to just a mere civil contract to which you could enter into and exit out of at will. That doesn't make any lasting fabric to society, because family is the foundation. Family is the foundation of society. But if you want to redefine family, family is whatever you make it. Now, there is a modern woman, and her name is Masha Geeson. Let me see if I can Google her. Masha Geeson. She is a Russian-American journalist, author, translator, activist who's been an outspoken critic of Russia, Vladimir Putin, and the President of the United States, and she's written extensively on LGBT rights. She's 52 years old. appears to be married to Darya, Darya, or a Shekinah. She has children. But the point here is Masha says, I don't know if I can, find the exact quote, but I shall paraphrase, that Masha says she is so bold, she's so emboldened, that she now feels that she can openly say that it is a lie to others and it's a lie to ourselves to say that we are out to do anything other than destroy traditional marriage, to basically replace it with any number of men, any number of women, including family members, to enter into and exit out of at will. So marriage is whatever you want to call it. So by definition, a misogynist is a person who hates women. A misogamist or a misogamist is someone who hates marriage. I would argue that this group is not out to strengthen the marriage institution, because her very words betray her that she is out to destroy traditional marriage as we know it, to replace it with whatever they feel marriage is. They want to rewrite the institution in their image, just as they want to destroy the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights, because they feel it is both an illegal and an immoral document, because the founding of America was both illegal and immoral. So therefore its supporting documents would both be illegal and immoral. So they can rewrite it in their image. They want to do the same thing with the Bible. They want to start taking out the male pronouns in the Bible. They want to take out Father. They want to take out Lord. They want to take out Son. Then they also have a NYU professor, and let me see if I can drag up her name. This is, let me find her. This is Judith Stacy. Judith Stacy is an author, professor of social and cultural analysis and sociology at New York University. Her primary focuses include family studies, gender studies, queer studies, and sexuality. She's 76 years old, and she basically advocates the same thing, the destruction of traditional marriage. Here, she says in a YouTube video, let's see, I'm not going to find the transcript of this, and I'm not going to take the time to play it for you because it's about 2 minutes long. But let me get back to this. She says that, where did I see it? Oh, here I see it. The New York professor, I'm for same-sex marriage, but I'm really against marriage. So she discusses openly the agenda to destroy traditional marriage as we know it. And again, replace it with whatever society feels that marriage has been redefined as. So we now have people so bold. I'd like to play these own words for you, but I'm not going to take the time to look it up on the other computer so that I can play it on YouTube. But they are openly saying they're against traditional marriage. The gloves are off. There's no longer, shall we say, red herrings and things of that nature. They're not throwing up red herrings. They're coming right out and telling you we're out to destroy traditional marriage. We want to replace it. We want to have a new construct in our image. So whatever we say it is, it is. So rewrite the Bible, rewrite the Constitution, rewrite the Bill of Rights, rewrite the institution of marriage, whatever it takes. Do you see any problem with that? Give me a call at the Service Legends Talk text line, 515-442-5764. As I said the other day, let me find the quote from Aleister Crowley. The fundamental axiom, tenet, or boilerplate underlying Thelma, known as the law of Thelma, is do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Or, pardon me, it's Thelema, not Thelma. It's a social or spiritual philosophy derived from Western Esotericism, Sosterism. Let me see if I can open this up a bit. It's to will, to wish, or want, or purpose. Do as you will, do as you wish, do as you want, do as you purpose. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. It was a religion founded in 1904 by English poet and mystic Aleister Crowley. What's any difference than Satan being channeled by the serpent telling Eve, do what you will? You'll surely be as God. Exercise your will apart from God. You know, Satan had exercised his will. Lucifer had exercised his will 5 times. I will ascend my throne before the Most High. I will. He exercised his will 5 times. And he encouraged Eve to exercise her personal will. Do what thou wilt. There's nothing new under the sun. Do what you will. Do what you wish. Do what you want. Do what you purpose. That's the whole of the law. This is what Judah Stacy and Masha Geeson want to rewrite our Constitution. Do as you will. Do as you please. Do as you want. And we will put our stamp of approval on it and call it marriage. Can you hear Satan speaking? Exercise your will and purpose against the sovereign of the universe. Don't listen to what he has to say. He's an old fuddy-duddy. He's not with it, man. He's not cool. Not hip. Satan argued, according to Ellen White, that he needed no law. He needed no governing body, no restrictions to restrict him from doing something or tell him what he needed to do. He was a perfect being, so how could he possibly do anything that was outside of the law? He basically portrayed to the angels that God's law and God's government was unfair. It was restricting his freedom. And he's tempted every human being since to exercise your will, your purpose for your life, not listen to someone else. Do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. Every human being alive has been tempted with this same temptation to exercise your will apart from God. But what does Jesus Christ tell us in the Lord's Prayer? Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. When we pray the words of the Lord's Prayer, we are submitting our will over to the Father. Let me share the traditional Lord's Prayer with you. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not in temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. The disciples wanted Jesus to teach them how to pray, and he taught them to pray. And in this prayer, we're asking for our daily bread, our daily forgiveness, forgiving our debts as we forgive our debtors. And we can only do this by submitting our will on a daily basis to Jesus, to the Father. Submitting our will to the Father. But Masha Geeson, Judah Stacy think this prayer is antiquated. They'd lock arms with Aleister Crowley. Do what thou wilt, do what thou please, do what thou want is the whole of the law. License is liberty, when liberty will only truly land you in bondage. The highest law is desire. What I want, what I need, that's the highest law. Aleister Crowley penned it right. My needs trump God's law. They worship at the altar of their own sexuality. So now we need to get to our Sabbath school lesson, so I guess we will leave polyamory and polygamy to this conversation to another day. But, friends, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. Now we're going to get to our Sabbath school lesson for today, and that lesson, I'm closing up some of these boxes here, so that's why I'm taking a little time. Wednesday, walking with the Lord. As we near the end of the book of Psalms, the exclamations of praise seem to grow in crescendo after crescendo. Now let me just say, the final 5 Psalms, I've heard it discussed that they are the most important Psalms you can read because they are full of praise. Crescendo after crescendo. There's no more, I need, I want, save me from this, deliver me from that. It's praise of God. The final 5 Psalms begin with the simple and direct command to praise the Lord, but the first of these, Psalms 146, has a particular focus on God's concern for the poor and oppressed as primary reason for such praise. Praise the Lord, O my soul. I will praise the Lord as long as I live. I will sing praises to my God while I have my being. Put not your trust in princes, as the Son of Man, in a son of man, in whom there's no salvation. When the breath departs, he returns to the earth. On the very day his plans perish. Blessed is he who hopes, whose help is the Lord God of Jacob, whose hope is in the Lord his God, who made heaven and earth and the sea and all that in them is, who keep faith forever, who executes judgment for the oppressed, who gives food to the hungry. The Lord sets prisoners free. The Lord opens the eyes of the blind. The Lord lifts up those who are bowed down. The Lord loves the righteous. The Lord watches over the sojourners. He upholds the widows and the fatherless, but the way of the wicked he brings to ruin. The Lord will reign forever, your God, O Zion, to all generations. Praise the Lord. What's the message here? What is God saying, especially in 146, 5-9? Blessed is he whose help is the God of Jacob, whose hope is in the Lord his God, who made heaven and earth and all that in them is, who keeps faith forever, who executes judgment for the oppressed, who gives food to the hungry. The Lord sets prisoners free. The Lord opens the eyes of the blind. The Lord lifts up those who are bowed down. The Lord loves the righteous. The Lord watches over sojourners, to uphold the widows and the fatherless. But the way of the wicked he brings to ruin. God is all-knowing. God is all-caring. God is all-watching. God is ready to deliver the blind, the hopeless, the downtrodden, the depressed. As surely as God is creator of the world, who made heavens and earth and the sea and all that in them is, and who keeps the faith forever? Where have we heard that before? We heard it in the 4th commandment. We heard it in the 3 angels' message. He who creates heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, he is creator. Masha Geeson and Judith Stacy, bow down to thy creator. This psalm describes God's continuing work in the world as judge, provider, liberator, healer, helper, and defender, all of these focused on people in specific need of these kinds of help. It is an inspiring vision of what God does and seeks to do in our lives, in our communities, and in our world. Sometimes we think of caring for the needy as something we ought to do because God said so. But Psalms 146 says this is something God already does. And we're invited to join with him. Do you know God is provided? No one is starving to death in this world for the lack of food. There's plenty of food in this world to feed every man, woman, and child, and all the dogs and animals to boot. The only reason you see these poor little black starving children in Ethiopia and some of these terrible scenes of starvation you see, and the flies swarm around their eyes, and they don't even have the strength to swat the flies away. I so often wonder, these people are so sick and malnourished, how do they have the energy to actually perform the act of sexual intercourse? It's amazing they can muster the energy. But these children are not starving to death, for there's plenty. God has provided for all. It's governments who are starving their own people to death. Just as blacks sold blacks into slavery, blacks officials in these countries are starving their own people. You hear anybody say that on the media, that Black Lives Matter? No, we're involved in a police shooting, or the media globs on to something that has some racial component where they can sit and stir the pot. But yet, we have boys and girls starving to death of malnutrition, bloated bellies, with flies swarming around with no strength to shoo them away. Do you hear anybody say Black Lives Matter? No, because it's black government officials, warlords, who are starving these people to death. It's blacks mistreating other blacks. It's mistreating their own people for their worldly and earthly gain. When we work against poverty, oppression, and disease, we are truly working with God in His purposes. What greater privilege can there be than partnering with God in fulfilling something as inspiring as Psalms 146? But there are also benefits for us in this. Christians often talk about their search for God and their desire to have a closer relationship and a closer walk with Him. Yet verses like Psalms 146, 7-9, execute judgment for the oppressed, give food to the hungry, set the prisoners free, open the eyes of the blind, lift those up who are bowed down, love the righteous, watch over the sojourners. And so many others throughout the Bible indicate to us that one way to find God is to join in Him with what He does. So, if He is working to lift up the poor, the sick, and the oppressed, as Psalms 146 says He is, we should be working with Him as well. Christ came to this earth to walk and work among the poor and the suffering. They received the greatest share of His attention, and today, in the person of His children, He visits the poor, the needy, relieves the woe, and alleviates suffering. The least of the brethren. God says, the people say, well, I didn't see you hungry, Lord. I didn't see you naked, Lord. Whatever you do to the least of my brethren, you've done it unto me. You do something good to the least of the brethren, you've done it to God. You've done something bad to the least of the brethren, you've done it to God. You might be picking on the apple of the Lord's eye. Take away suffering and need, and we should have no way of understanding the love and the mercy of God, no way of knowing the compassion, no way of knowing the compassionate, sympathetic Heavenly Father. Never does the gospel put on an aspect of greater loveliness than when it is brought to the most needy and destitute regions. This is from Ellen White, Testimonies for the Church, Volume 7, page 226. What has been your experience in how we become close to God by serving others? Well, again, you're God's arm and legs and feet and hands and mouthpiece on this earth. I once picked up a hitchhiker in Wagon Wheel, New Mexico. This guy had got his truck stolen in Phoenix, a restored topper engine tranny of an old mid-70s pickup full of his tools, and he got it stolen in Phoenix. And he was trying to work his way, after spending most of his money in motels, trying to wait and see if the Phoenix police would find his truck. They told him that you know, if you haven't found it in a certain amount of days, it's gone. This guy was working his way back up to North Dakota because he was heard there was work up there, and he was trying to go back up and recoup over his loss in Phoenix. He went there for work. So I could have went a couple of different ways to get from El Paso back to Des Moines, but I chose to go up straight up Interstate 25 and skirt the Rocky Mountains and hit up to 80. I could have went a couple of different directions, but something told me to go this way. I picked up a hitchhiker after stopping to get gas in around Wagon Wheel, New Mexico, and I normally don't pick up hitchhikers, but for some reason I felt the urge and the need and the desire to pick up this guy, a prompting maybe. The guy tells me he's getting ready to sleep under the stars again. Said it took him 3 days just to get across Albuquerque, New Mexico. I told him I could get him up as far as Interstate 29 going north into North Dakota. I told him along the way, I said, we had a long discussion, we had a lot of hours to talk. I told him along the way, talked about the desire to end it all and commit suicide. Just wondering what he was doing and what life had in store for him. And I suggested to him, and I talked to him, and I suggested to him, I said, you know, I'm a Christ-loving Christian. And I looked him in the eye, and I said, friend, you said some prayers that you wanted Jesus to show you something. You may be looking right now in the face of Jesus. Because it's a miracle that I decided to go this direction, because I was headed another way when I turned and I made a decision to go north on 25. And I believe it was Jesus Christ leading me to you. I said, I'm not some holy guy. I'm a man that struggles with life just like you, but you're looking into the face of Jesus. You prayed last night, Lord, if you're out there, do something. And the Lord answered your prayer because he led me when it took you 3 days to get across Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm able to get you to North 29 going into North Dakota, and maybe you can pick up a truck. And that's where I parted company and pick up a truck, hitchhike with a trucker, maybe to get up to North Dakota. But I got him as far as Omaha. And to get his way headed up north. Council Bluffs, Omaha area, and he was able to head up north. That's our experience as a Christian and how we serve others. So till tomorrow. And again, I would just mention at 6 o'clock Friday evening when View from the Pew goes off until 6 o'clock the next Sunday evening, KPOG 102.9 FM will be off the air. So until tomorrow, this is Frank the Verse Thomas here at
KPOG 102.9 FM, Grimes.